This video is humbly dedicated to the memory of Chester E. Whiting and to all of the members, past and present, that have served with pride and dignity during these glorious years.
The stature of a leader grows only in proportion to his confidence in and respect for those whom he is destined to lead. He must recognize and understand the aspirations, the needs, and the frailties of his men. Likewise, they must be tolerant in their appraisal of his policies and his judgments as well. It was this tolerant appraisal which those men made during our early days and through the ensuing years that made possible the development of one of the world's greatest bands. For what they were and for what they did in accepting me as their commanding officer, I shall always be humbly grateful.
Dateline, Washington, D.C., May 10th, 1996. Musical and military history is made as the United States Army Field Band convenes in celebration and recognition of its 50 years of unparalleled service, 50 years of dedication to its mission, and 50 years of achievement. With this video, we proudly salute 50 years of excellence, highlighting the brilliant careers of the United States Army Field Band's commanders, conductors, musicians, singers, and support staff, all of whom embody an esprit de corps that is magical in nature, electric in performance, and emotionally riveting as musical ambassadors of the United States Army. Our overture begins with a kaleidoscopic retrospect of 50 years of musical tradition, with pictorial memorabilia. Remember, remember, remember. That's a thumbnail sketch of the past. But where and how did it all begin? To understand how the field band acquired its unique mission, it's necessary to trace the band's history back to 1944. In that year, the War Department directed the organization of a band made up entirely of qualified musicians who had combat service overseas. Commanded by Chief Warrant Officer Chester E. Whiting, the new band was named the 1st Combat Infantry Band, and its mission was to tour the country and provide entertainment at war bond drives. From October 1944 to March 1946, the band toured 20,000 miles in 25 states and appeared before an estimated audience of 1.5 million people. It became known as the $1 Million Band, since more than $1 million worth of defense and victory bonds were sold as a direct result of the band's nationwide tours. When it was no longer possible to maintain a band composed exclusively for musicians with combat experience, plans were made to reorganize and rename the band. General Jacob L. Devers, commander of the U.S. Army Ground Forces, issued the following order to Whiting. I want you to organize a band that will carry into the grassroots of our country the story of our magnificent Army, its glorious traditions and achievements, and of the great symbol of American manhood, the ground soldier. On March 21, 1946, the United States Army Ground Forces Band was activated. Our first commanding officer, Captain Chester E. Whiting, served in that capacity from 1946 until his retirement as lieutenant colonel in 1960. Let's take a stroll down memory lane as we remember those early years. In 1950, our name was redesignated the United States Army Field Band to better reflect the true mission of our organization.
I was at Yankee Stadium when Lou Gehrig had his swan song at the stadium, and he said he was the luckiest guy in the world. I think I was the luckiest guy in the world because I was sent to the Army Ground Forces Band by mistake. I should have gone to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, somehow the orders got mixed up, and they ended up in the Army Ground Forces Band. Then First Sergeant Sanner, Bob Sanner, a close personal friend of mine, asked Colonel Whiting, then Captain Whiting, if he could have me to be in the office, and of course he said okay, and that was the beginning of my career in the field band.
Well, I guess as First Sergeant, I guess one of my first tours as First Sergeant was pretty new experience for me, because on that tour we had to go by train. We had to make sure that the buses and the trucks and everything were loaded on flat cars. Imagine going through a train, going along and with your mess gear, and you go through the line and go from one car to the other, and the wind blowing and all the movement of the trains. It was a pretty hectic trip. It was in San Francisco that we ran across Gene Coughlin, who subsequently was enlisted into the band and was one of our chief vocalists, and he did a very, very good job on Old Man River, and subsequently became very instrumental in making the course a very outstanding organization, and something that the crowd loved very much.
The Soldiers' Chorus originally consisted of members of the band, instrumentalists. I think Colonel Whiting had this idea of having a singing group. He thought there was enough talent to form a chorus, all men's chorus, and he called back into service Sergeant D'Onofrio. Sergeant D'Onofrio had been a member of the Combat Infantry Band. The idea of the Soldiers' Chorus, one of the great ideas was, and during about the middle of the program, we had about 30 people just leave their seats from behind their instruments on the stage and gather in the center of the stage, and we'd start singing various tunes.
How many of you remember this 1951 Paul Whiteman TV show?
I love a parade, the tramping of feet. I love every beat I hear of a drum. I love a parade. When I hear a band, I just want to stand and cheer as they come. That rat-a-tat-tat, the blare of a horn, the rat-a-tat-tat, a bright uniform. The sight of a drill will give me a thrill. I thrill at the skill of anything military. I love a parade, a handful of vets, a line of cadets, or any brigade. For I love a parade.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, you will hear the Soldier Chorus of the United States Army Field Band with Staff Sergeant John Ricklebany as soloist.
Yes, I've lost my little darling. The night they were playing the beautiful Tennessee waltz. I remember the night and the Tennessee waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my the drumsticks are blaring, the clarinets are clarineting, the clarinets are clarineting, the horns play just the same, the horns play just the same, the clarinets are clarineting, the clarinets are clarineting, the bassoon plays nicely as the counterpoint. The bassoon plays nicely as the counterpoint. Bum 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 bum. The clarinets are clarineting, the clarinets are clarineting,
My favorite part of the year was Christmas. I enjoyed Christmas immensely. Of course, the chorus did a lot of performing. Christmas is the busiest time probably of the year musically. We, the band, went to New York to record a half-hour show for the Big Picture, which was then an Army kind of a public relations half-hour that showed nationwide every week. And we spent about 5 days in New York City recording this program. We did this barrack scene of 2 or 3 of us, myself, Jack Meyer, Gene Coughlin, and Ray Krug, if I remember. So one of my lines was, "Why go home for Christmas? There's lots of fellowship here." And then we went into a tune.
Well, suppose you're not home for Christmas. This is home away from home.
Sure, there's plenty of good fellowship here.
Oh, a song by the fire with a chum by your side. Oh, a song by the fire with a heart open wide. Oh, a song by the fire with a heart open wide. For the wolf wind is wailing at the doorway, and the snow drifts deep along the road, and the ice gnomes are marching from the Norway, and the great white cold walks abroad. Zoom, 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 zoom. But here by the fire we defy frost and storms. Ha ha, we are warm and we have a heart's desire. For here we're good fellows, and the beechwood and the bellows, and the song is on the lip in the pledge of fellowship. Oh, here by the fire we defy frost and storms. Ha ha, we are warm and we have a heart's desire. For here we're good fellows, and the beechwood and the bellows, and the song is on the lip in the pledge of fellowship.
Well, Colonel Whiting had this idea of organizing this drum act. He had seen down in Australia in his World War II days an act or a performance by a drummer, and he wanted to convey this idea to the public with 6 drummers. We'd play to the tune of Churry Berry Bim, da 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 dee da dee, and doing drum taps and chuck jump jump with the sticks coming up to the mouth and hitting other sticks back and forth and throwing them. Sometimes we would have little bets going. If anyone dropped a stick, we all met at a nearby bar, and that person who dropped the stick had to buy us all a beer. It was a wonderful cellar, and it was great for a show, but Colonel Whiting and Mandelsky laid this all out, and we did this for at least 20 years of this, and it was one of the trademarks of the Ground Forces Field Band at that time. Great, it was a great part of the program.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Captain Chester E. Whiting, conductor of the United States Army Field Band. Our twist and twirl artists have come up with a little thing which we call the Drummer's Delight. We hope you like it too.
"1960 rolled around quickly with Lieutenant Colonel Robert L. Beerley taking command of the band. Under his direction, the band continued its worldwide ambassadorship and welcomed the first black musician into the band.
One specific day in 1963, the Colonel Pacelli, Major Allen, Mr. Gibson, Captain Gibson at the time, came from the Pentagon to the 2nd Army Band, put me in the staff car, carried me to the field band, and told them at this particular time that they had brought a man to be in the organization. At that particular time, Colonel Beardy stuttered and says, well, what's he do? He says, well, he's a drummer. He said, well, I've got drummers. He said, well, he says, what else can he do? He said, well, he can sing. He said, well, if he can pass the audition, I'll take him until we have an opening within the band. I was told that I would be able to, as soon as an opening became available, that I would be accepted into the percussion section. On a Southwestern tour, where one of the tunes that was to be played was a La Fiesta Mexicana. Unfortunately, a member of the percussion section had to return to Baltimore for a family emergency, and they didn't have anyone to play the mallet parts. Jim O'Leary knew that I was a percussionist, Vince Romeo knew I was a percussionist, and I was asked if I could possibly do this particular chart. And I told them that I would do my best and try. They allowed me to try, and fortunately enough, I was very successful that evening, and the band even enjoyed what I managed to perform that night. So basically, that is how I really gained a foothold within the band and found a home. By being one of the first blacks in the organization, we had to address the racial issue and how we were treated within the band and the local populace all across the country. I'll take for Bob Throne and myself, after he got here with us, we had basically made a pact to say that we were going to do the best job and be the best we possibly could be, so that in time they would again bring other blacks into the organization. Of the practically 20 years that I spent, I was very pleased with my hand in what I did and how I did it. For this reason, I felt like I was a part of the family, and I just continued to just do it, just to do it.
Colonel Beard was a very fine person, about the best you can describe, besides being a good musician. He was a nice guy, just really a very nice fellow. Yeah, I don't think he would harm a flea. He kept control, but he never had any antagonisms against anyone. I never heard him speak anything negative about anyone, and while I was a member of the field band at that time.
Colonel Beerley's tour of duty lasted until 1966, but what a great 7 years we had. 1966 ushered in the command of Lieutenant Colonel Wilmot Trumbull until his reassignment in 1968. In those 3 short years, the band continued to arouse the public wherever they traveled and carried the message of the American ground soldier. Many of you will remember those crazy happy days, being the kings of the highway. In 1968, the baton was passed to Lieutenant Colonel Hal J. Gibson, who served with musical and military distinction until 1974. His career was filled with innumerous musical successes, and the band owes a great deal of gratitude to this dynamic leader.
Colonel Gibson was a real showman. He started the transition that evolved into the type of programming that's still being used today in the band. His showmanship has led the band to new heights in entertainment, and that entertainment concept continues. When Colonel Gibson first arrived at the band, there was a ceremonial detachment, a non-touring component that stayed back off the road and played ceremonies in the Fort Meade and surrounding areas. He took that organization, restructured it into what became the studio band, and was the predecessor to today's jazz ambassadors. Under Colonel Gibson, Gene Coughlin was given a lot more latitude with the Soldiers' Chorus. Unlike the earlier years, it became an individual component made up of vocalists alone rather than instrumentalists drawn out of the concert band. During that same time period, individual groups, smaller groups within the chorus began to form, like the Volunteers, which later became an independent touring component of its own.
We add the folk music flavor to our next selection as we present The Volunteers and Beautiful City.
What a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, my Lord is born in Bethlehem.
All I want for Christmas is my two front teeth. My two front teeth. See my two front teeth. Gee, if I could only have my two front teeth, then I could wish you Merry Christmas.
Then I could wish you Merry Christmas. Light a rose, I'm home again, rose to get the sun back in the sky. Light a rose, I'm home again, rose, God knows that my last night. I ding dong dee, oh yes, I believe the chapel bells chime. Ding dong dee, after this suggestion, I'll pop the question. Light a rose, I'm home again, rose.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the nation's capital, the internationally famous United States Army Field Band presents Sing Out for America, featuring Satin Brass and the Soldiers' Chorus under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Hal J. Gibson.
Sing out for America, America, the land of the free. Sing out for America, she's calling out for you and for me. With head held high and with voices loud, sing the praises of our land of which we're justly proud. The love of freedom is our battle cry, so hearts to our land high. Sing out for America, the land of liberty.
You got trouble. Oh, we got trouble. Right here in River City. Right here. With capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for who? Oh, we surely got trouble. Right here in River City. Remember the Maine, Plymouth Rock, and the Golden Rule.
Children gonna have trouble.
Oh, we're in trouble. We're in terrible, terrible trouble. That game with the 15 numbered balls is the devil's score. Oh, yes, you got trouble, trouble, trouble. Oh, yes, you got trouble here. With T, you got to rhyme with P, and that stands for pool.
This is
I've been thinking an awful lot lately about the 50th anniversary of the Army Field Band and what a great time this is in the history of this fabulous organization. The other day, for the first time in a long time, I pulled Colonel Whiting's book off the shelf and went in, and I had forgotten about the inscription. To Lieutenant Sam Fricano, who someday will have my old job as CO of the U.S. Army Field Band. Good luck to you, Sam, always. Chester E. Whiting, Easter, 1964.
Then, in 1974, something unique happened. A former enlisted man became commander and conductor of the band. His name, Major Samuel J. Fricano.
I'm trying to think of highlights. What are the most memorable moments? It's like trying to remember which kernel of an ear of corn tasted the best. The life in the field band was a series of highlights. I wrote down some of the nicknames that were very memorable. Bufo Simmons. Bufo Simmons, our solo clarinetist. Reverend Ross and Deacon Green, two of the drivers. Cadillac Joe Orris. Butch Domchek. And, of course, Moldy Miller. That was a great nickname. And who could ever forget Nails Rostek, hard as nails. Spickle Valdez, bus commander, bus number 4, my bus commander. Even Colonel Beerley had a nickname. For many years, he was called Slim Beerley. The first director of the Soldiers Chorus, Snuffy D'Onofrio. And we had another Snuffy later on, clarinet player Don Snuffy Smith. Great nicknames to go with some of the unforgettable characters of the United States Army Field Band. One of the historic things that happened that first year that I began my tenure as commander of the band was the integration of the first female members of the chorus. The field band at that time was, it was almost 30 years old, and it had been an all-male organization. And that year we got the first 4 females. Colleen, Lori, Jatana, and Cheryl. And who would have thought that it was going to go so smoothly?
I think we went on the road with 100, and out of that 100, there were 4 women, which was a new experience for the men, and it was certainly a new experience for the women. The men were always gentlemen, but in our minds, maybe a little bit too much so. And this is not exactly what we were here to prove. We weren't here to prove that we were, gung-ho women's lib or anything like that. We just wanted to be accepted as a part of the organization.
In any event, and when the women came in, there was a lot of adjustments and changes for the guys. Again, we were growing out of that old Army era, but in a lot of ways the band was still a bunch of rough, tough guys. It was a different animal traveling on the road then. You had 100 guys caged in 3 buses for 6 weeks at a time, and we made a lot of roadside stops that we no longer made after the women came because we had to find an appropriate facility rather than just getting out and kicking the tires. But they also rounded out the organization. They brought a personality there that maybe wasn't before.
Sam Fricano, who was my friend, he was the commander of the band, was also my friend. And he was a friend of a lot of people.
In 1979, Lieutenant Colonel William E. Clark was introduced as the band's new commander and conductor.
The Soldiers Chorus has come a long way since I first got here in 1974. The professionalism has increased tremendously, and I can attribute that to, I think, the leadership of Colonel Clark. He had a style of leadership wherein he always made an effort to surround himself with people that were better than he was, and he told me that. And I think he set the standard of when we audition someone, we always try and replace that individual with someone who is at least as good or hopefully better than the person that we are losing.
We began to get a lot more selective in the audition process, or I should say actually formalized in the audition process. No longer we were selecting from one or two individuals that might come and audition for a particular slot, but we were looking at a wide range of people. We started sending out notifications to music schools and colleges all over the country, as well as advertising in national music publications. That gave us a pretty good draw, and we might advertise for one vacancy and get as many as 20 or 30 tapes in. So we would screen through the tapes and maybe select 8 to 10 people to actually come in and take a live audition. Obviously, this gave us a much better selection process as far as finding the best person for that vacancy.
Touring was paramount as the band traveled from coast to coast and continent to continent, bringing its story to the grassroots.
I'm very proud of the fact that I have been afforded the opportunity to be a part of the Army Field Band and to meet some of the people and to work with some of the people that I've had the extreme pleasure and honor of working with. And I knew immediately that this was where I wanted to be, that this was my home. I could spend the rest of my life here, and that's what I've done.
But for me, no single point in time is so crystal clear or stands out so vividly as when the field band marched into the U.S. cemetery at Omaha Beach on the 40th anniversary of D-Day.
In France, the band and chorus participated in the 40th anniversary ceremonies of the D-Day invasion. The concert band was at Omaha Beach with Presidents Reagan and Mitterrand, while the soldiers' chorus was in Paris, performing at the Suresnes Cemetery and Memorial.
Upon Colonel Clark's retirement in 1992, Colonel Jack Grogan received the nod as commander and conductor, and the fame of the United States Army Field Band continued to skyrocket.
Jack Grogan, of course, I worked with since 1969 when he came to us as a young lieutenant, did advanced work, went to Vietnam, came back. He was a wonderful executive officer for me during the time that I was commander, and now I'm so happy to see my good friend Jack Grogan, Colonel Jack Grogan, as commander of the Army Field Band, and I'm confident that the future of the band is in wonderful hands, and it makes me proud to know that I've known this young man for 25 years now.
Came here to the field band immediately following the School of Music when I first came in. Saw the band performing under Colonel Hal Gibson, then Major Gibson. I was amazed at how good they were and the impact that they had on the people. And once this organization gets a hold of you, it's just like taking a hold of your heart. It becomes your whole life. And I saw that in the people that were in this organization too. I've had the privilege of serving in 3 distinct Army field bands. The first one was the old group that was under Chet Whiting. They were in the process of retiring when I first came on board in 1969. How tight they were as a group. It was just fantastic. Now, for me as a young person, it was hard to grasp that. What made these people so tight? I really didn't understand that love for that organization and the love for the mission, dedication to the mission. Something very important to me. The second group that I saw was after I came back to my second assignment to the field band after Vietnam, and the Army was changing. The Army was downsizing. At that time, Major Ficano was in charge of the band. The right man at the right time for that job, because he handled the situation very well. A big transition in the Army and a lot of changes going on, especially in this organization. Then I left, had assignments outside the field band again, went over to other assignments, including overseas assignments. Finally came back in 1988 under Colonel Bill Clark, the third distinct band that I've seen. A band that has gone through the transition, has come out of it very well, and is just doing a fantastic job. I was impressed with the changes that had gone on in the band. Bill Clark had done a great job. New albums, touring overseas. The mission of the band has expanded not only to touring in the United States, but helping out diplomats overseas or entertaining the troops overseas. It was great. Then it came time for me to take over this band. And I couldn't have gotten here if it hadn't have been for Hal Gibson, Sam Ficano, and Bill Clark, and all of the wonderful NCOs and all the wonderful soldiers that were in this organization. They came on board, they helped me, they trained me. I'm a privileged person to be in charge of this band. This is something you dream about. It's your whole life. You fall in love with the band. Something that has carried over in each one of those three bands that I talked about is this close-knit, bonding family, whatever you want to call it, that comes together. That's the great thing about this band. That's what makes it different. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it so effective for the United States Army. Yes, this is the 50th anniversary of the field band. And it's very important for us because for many of our retirees, this will be the last great event. So it is with great honor that we pay tribute to those who have got us to this point. And to you who have gotten us to this point, let me assure you, this band is in good hands with the people that are here today. And they will take this band onward. Onward. They will take this band to the people of the United States and to the people of the world, carrying the mission of our military members with them. Godspeed to you all. God's blessings to all of us. Godspeed to those that come in the future.
Our TV cameras took a short visit this past month to view the new operations at Fort Meade, Maryland. And here it is, live. The band in rehearsals. On May 10, 1996, many young and old United States Army Field Band faithfuls joined together in celebration of 50 years of musical achievements. This is the way you looked on that special night. And so we say goodnight for now, but not goodbye. For the United States Army Field Band has a mission, a goal, a place in the future of these, our United States. The Field Band pledges to you and the world, we will be there as musical ambassadors of the United States Army to do the job you commissioned us to do. God bless America.